Okay, so we're speaking directly to some of the questions that Brianna has posted on the blog about emotional eating. She's a young mom with 2 children under 2 and has asked questions about how to avoid emotional eating. She's just come out of a dieting and exercising, a very compulsive, it sounds like, or restrictive, she said, past of dieting and exercising. So in addition to prayerfully considering whether or not this is a season that God may have you eliminate certain foods from your home just for a season, and again, that's just be cautious there, because I don't want to send you back into the restrictive dieting mentality. This is just temporary, like for 2 weeks, and then evaluate again. In addition to something like that, you may want to evaluate, is there a pattern to the times of the day that are the most difficult for you and the kids? And if there are times of the day that are most difficult for you and the kids, proactively you can plan for an event or an activity or an outing that you could do during that time that would specifically take you, that you would look forward to. Now, I remember well the days of having 2 children close in age and gathering them up and all the stuff up to go anywhere. And I know it can be overwhelming. So perhaps you could evaluate, is there something that you could do in the home that you could save for those especially difficult times that might distract? Like for me, it could be a bath. The kids loved being in the bath together at that young age. You know, I had one of them that would be in the little ring that would hold her upright, while my son, I mean, they were young enough that I'd let them bathe together. Or sometimes we could play in the sink with all kinds of dishes and things like that, and with bubbles, and they loved that. That was something that I could use as a pit hour activity that would give me joy, especially if I could find a way to take pictures of them while supervising them, because it was so much fun. And rotating through different activities that you might be able to come up with, planning ahead, so that I know that when we get uppity about something on Tuesday, this is what we're going to do. Or one of the things I have done, and when my kids were really little, was we had a sandbox and we put a bunch of rice in it, and we had it inside. So, and they loved playing in it. It was the strangest thing in my opinion. But anyhow, so that's something that we could do. Of course, you have to be careful of, I guess, at 1 year of age. Yeah, the food thing. So anyway, the eating of the rice. You don't want that. Okay, so use your wisdom about your kids and your situation. But if there's a way that you can plan activities, plan to go for a walk on those nice days, where you can put them both in the stroller, or if you have a backpack for one and a stroller for the other, do that. My kids and I trained for a marathon. Well, I trained for the marathon pushing them in a double jog stroller when they were 2, and Daniel was 23 months older, so he was almost 4. So even while they're little, they can do things like that. But for me, saving special things that I enjoy with my kids for those times of the day can be really helpful. Obviously, the idea is to cut off the temptation for emotional eating before it even strikes. Now, my son is on the autism spectrum, and I well remember how hard life was when he was little. It was I mean, I know it's hard for any young mom with 2 small children, but his frustration level was really low, and he couldn't speak very well, so he couldn't express it as well. So he'd get terribly upset really pretty easily, and I would melt down too. So I understand well the challenge that you're facing. In fact, it was more like I had 2 children closer in age than 23 months apart. But, God knows the situation that we're facing, and He knows the situation He's appointed to us. He knows what our children are like. He knows what we're like. And we have a chance to choose to turn to Him in those moments. And I know you know that. That's why you're asking these questions. But the biggest trick is choosing that. Choosing that in this moment. And again, I come back to, it's like boundaries on the highway. There's that double yellow line down the middle of the highway, and in the United States anyway, most of us stay on the right side of the yellow lines because we choose to. We don't want to run the risks that happen when we cross that double yellow line. And there's a boundary that most of us have for ourselves when we walk into a store and we see something we want. We adhere to the boundary of not taking it off the shelf and putting it in our purse and walking out until we've paid for it. And so we kind of have to be willing to establish boundaries for ourselves relative to our eating. We just have to. It's one of those things that we get to do. You know, while we are free, and it's not to, the boundaries aren't to be interpreted as rules or diet laws. We need to live as those who are free. But Titus chapter 2 points out to us that the same grace that brings us salvation also teaches us to say no to ungodliness. And so we can prayerfully set boundaries for ourselves and know that this is a good and godly thing. We don't need to be afraid of it, even though that may be our temptation or our tendency after being in a restrictive dieting situation. Okay, well, I personally find that for emotional eating especially, there are some tools that can help me to manage my way through. I have a friend, Barb Raveling, who I've spoken at the blog about before, who has done a whole lot with emotional eating. Now, she speaks a lot of dieting, but she has most recently kind of spoken about boundaries instead of, whatever your boundary is for eating. If it's, she speaks to the people who are dieting, the calorie restriction. But for those who eat 0 to 5, that's a boundary as well. She's ministering to people who have whatever kind of boundary. So just a caveat for you there. She has at her website, beyondthesinnersprayer.wordpress.com. And her website will be changing soon. I imagine she'll have a referral. But she teaches something called truth journaling, which I have used a lot, and I hope to speak more about that at my blog here in the days ahead. And that is a great tool. Additionally, she has an iTunes app for the iPod Touch and the iPhone and the iPad called I Deserve a Donut. And this is a great app. I think it's like $1.99 or $2.99, something like that. It might even be free by now. That helps tremendously with changing our thinking and renewing our minds. And Brianna, you could, in the moment when you are struggling with emotions that are luring you to food, you could pull out that app if you indeed do have an iPhone or an iPod or an iPad, and it would ask you questions. You would choose the emotion that you're feeling. It would ask you questions. I've spoken at this at my HeidiBylsma.com blog about this app specifically. I'll include that link here. And it asks questions that we can evaluate. Will eating actually help me in this moment? Will it make the emotions go away? Well, if we're honest, it's probably the answer to that is no. In fact, I might feel worse. I mean, I might feel better for a moment because I'm doing something pleasurable, eating. But afterwards, I'm going to feel worse. I'm going to return to my emotions about the situation that I was running from, and I'm also going to feel bad about the eating that I did. Okay, so and the questions will go on and have us actually pull apart. What are other ways of thinking about this? I can't even replicate the questions here without actually reading them for you. But and again, at my other blog, I have shared one day from one of the sets of questions there with her permission. A third thing, excuse me, that you can do, Brianna, is what participants in my Thin Within classes online have called the God Feast. Again, I speak about the God List here at this blog, but also at my other blog. I'll include links here as well. The God List is a running list of all of the things that I discover about God through His Word, through godly Christian music, through Bible studies, whatever. And then I can use it at any moment in time to praise my God. I can praise Him for His attributes. I can just read the list saying, God, you are. God, you are. And as I do that, I find that as I feast on His presence, that emptiness that I was feeling that isn't physical hunger at all is actually filled up. And sometimes I have to fight pretty hard. I'll be honest with you about that. Sometimes, it's not easy. This is not going to be easy. It's not, especially if you've been involved in dieting. Dieting told us what to do. It was real simple in some ways. We know how to lose weight dieting. There's so much freedom and so many opportunities for us to make choices. That means we have choices that we might make choices that aren't in our best interest or for God's glory, and we can make choices that are for our good and God's glory. But the fact that we have choices makes it a little more challenging. Anyway, I guess, Brianna, the bottom line is we have to decide how much we want this. And then we have to be willing to fight for it. It's not going to be easy. And then we have to realize that we've got to extend grace to ourselves because we'll be at this our whole entire lives. It's probably never going to be easy. Judy Halliday, who wrote the books with her husband, she still has things that come up from time to time, even though she's been at this for a long time, like 30 years now. Is it that long? Anyway, I'm not sure, but it's been a long time. 89? I think it's been since 89. Anyway, maybe even sooner. Longer ago than that. Anyway, well, I hope this has been some help, even if it's not necessarily the answers you wanted to hear. I really believe after doing this since 1999 that these are answers that, well, they're the answers I have. And I would love to hear what other people have to say about this. What do you do when you have two small children, under 2, and you're trying to meet their needs all day long? What do others of you do? What do you recommend to Brianna and other young moms? You guys are closer to that right now than I am. It's been 15 years since I've had little kids. My kids are now 20 and 18. So what do you do? I would love to see your advice given to one another. Anyway, that's all I have to say about that for now. Bye.